Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Richard and welcome back to a stock market outlook video brought to you by DeepView. Once again, if you want more information on the DeepView platform and what it includes and also what it will include, such as a journaling module, go ahead and click the link down below in the description and sign up for the early access list. This is available for a limited time only and will be launching very soon. So definitely go ahead and check that out. Sign up for the mailing list. You don't want to miss it. Also, if you enjoy my analysis at any time, please go ahead and leave me a like down below. It helps me out and my channel immensely. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. With that said, let's go ahead and dive right in with the analysis of the market indexes to start with. Then we'll also dive into some potential leading stocks as well. First things first, looking at the QQQ, the NASDAQ 100 ETF, you can see that we continue to pull back. We rallied a little bit early on last week, but then pull back pretty hard, a gap down, potential move up, then rejection, close near the lows, and then another gap down, although a decent close off lows on this Friday. Now we do remain above a rising 21 EMA, so the short-term trend is intact, but it looks like pretty much over the last 2 weeks, we're still just kind of basing, going sideways, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We had a very strong move upwards. It got a little bit unsustainable. You can see that this upper trend line was violated, and that's when we really started pulling back and just consolidating and pulling back pretty much to the top of this prior range, which for me is completely normal. And we just have to wait and see what happens next and also how the leaders are acting. We did see some distribution come in on these days in some leaders like FOUR4. So we'll have to see if more of them hold up and we just see rotation, or if it's kind of more and more distribution coming in to the charts, but we don't have to predict. All we have to do is wait and see what happens and analyze what's going on right in basically before our eyes. So that is the NASDAQ Composite. A nice close on Friday. I'd love to see it kind of rally a little bit, form out this kind of base, short-term consolidation, and then of course eventually break through this pivot high as well as this high as well and continue this advance. The 200-day moving average is still declining, but we're kind of slowing that descent, and we still are above a rising 50-day moving average. And at this point, we got kind of unsustainably above it. And this consolidation has kind of let that kind of catch up a little bit to price. And we'll see more and more of that. If we do continue sideways, we'll see that 50-day moving average catch up to price, and then ideally we push off that level, that kind of confluence of the 200-day and 50-day SMA. So that is the NASDAQ Composite. Nothing abnormal just yet, but I'd love to see us rally a little bit into next week. And let's move on to the SPY. The S&P 500 ETF looks very similar. Upside reversal here on Friday, similar action sideways over the past 2 weeks, pulling back towards the top of this range. We're a little bit weaker here on this ETF versus the NASDAQ. Tech has kind of been the leading index as of this moment, but we're holding above that 21 EMA on a closing basis, as well as above a rising 50 SMA and a 200-day that is still declining, but also kind of lessening its slope downward and becoming a little bit more shallow. And ideally, this starts pushing up and we rally through these levels. So nothing abnormal, still within that short-term rally. But if we do see, big volume come in, more and more distributions, more and more distribution days, as well as clusters of those distribution days, that's when you want to kind of, take your foot off the gas and become a lot more defensive. And we've maybe started to see that a little bit. We've seen some distribution, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Moving on to the IWM, the Russell 2000 ETF, you can see that this is holding up a little bit better. We're well above a rising 21 EMA. We're pulling back right to the top of that prior range, and we rallied strongly off of it. We did see not a great close on this day, but a little bit stronger than the other ETFs. And right now, just kind of basing after a very strong move off this higher low. Nothing abnormal here, just above a rising 21 EMA, 50 SMA, and the 200-day, which is now very slightly sloping upwards, which is a good sign. I love to see this index kind of lead things out, as well as the NASDAQ 100. Moving on to SMH, which is kind of the leading group as of this moment. This is also just kind of basing here. We pull back into that 21 EMA. We're just kind of going flat below around 250. We do have earnings with NVIDIA coming up, so that will definitely impact things on this ETF. But as of right now, we're above a rising 21 EMA, 50 SMA, and a 200 SMA, which is very shallow and could just slightly be increasing. Some basing was expected after this really strong move, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. We're also at that kind of critical level right near 250. These two prior areas where a lot of volume was seen. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see some more basing here. I'd love to see us rally and eventually break through these levels. Moving on to the mega caps, let's start with Tesla here. This also has been basing over the past week and a half at this kind of key level, which is the bottom of this prior base, and was potential support here, which was eventually broken as we saw that washout. And now we've had that strong rally, nice gap up on earnings on the highest volume in over a year, nice strong action up to that level. And then it's kind of, an obvious point in the market and an obvious spot where we would see some consolidation. We've also got that 200-day moving average right above it. So I'd love to see it move sideways for another week and then basically pop through these levels as well as that 200-day, and ideally start another move towards those previous highs. It's got some work to do, but some nice action since that earnings report and off these lows. Moving on to Google. This is definitely a lot weaker. You can see we're right at that 50-day moving average. We're below declining 21 EMA, which is always kind of a short-term downtrend for me. And we were rejected at a declining 200-day moving average. So obviously this had some news related to the kind of AI search, the chatbot from OpenAI. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Right now, we're still in a longer-term downtrend and also in a short-term downtrend below declining 21 EMA. So just using these three simple moving averages, the 21 EMA, the 200 SMA, and 50 SMA, and I mean simple by, it's three easy ones because obviously the 21 is an exponential. Just using those three different time frames gives you a really good perspective on what the trend of a stock is. Is a longer term trend up? Is it above a rising 200-day? That's checkbox. Is it above a rising 50 SMA? That's kind of the intermediate term trend. And is it above a rising 21 EMA? That's that short term kind of swing trade trend. And you can even use a 5 or 10-day simple to get an even shorter term time frame. Just trading in an alignment with those moving averages, meaning you're trying to go long what's above all three rising moving averages. And if you're going to short, you go short below three downtrending moving averages. Just doing that will, really up your odds and make sure you're trading with the trend and not just trading what you think should happen, trading on your opinions, more listening to the market and aligning your actions with the market. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. So that is Google. Moving on to Apple, definitely looks a lot stronger above a rising 21 EMA. The 200-day, it popped above it. It's holding above that, just going sideways below this key level, which also lines up with the top of this prior area. So it's kind of a bottoming cup with this being a handle forming above that 200-day. And I'd love to see it just kind of base out one more week and then kind of break through on volume and make its way towards those previous all-time highs. Still definitely has a lot of work to do. Overhead supply here with these mega caps, but that would be constructive for the overall indexes. But even the weakness in the mega caps, which is going to hold down, those large ETFs, the QQQ and SPY, there's still going to be plenty of opportunities in the smaller cap names and names that aren't as correlated with the indexes. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll go through a few later on in this video. So that is Apple. Let's move on to Meta, Facebook. This had an earnings gap, and now it's kind of leaking below it. Decent action on Friday, an oops reversal as it gapped lower below this low and rallied through that and closed above it. And now it's above a rising 21 EMA. But we'll have to see whether this can kind of form out a base here. We're at a pretty key level, this prior spot, which also kind of lines up with this prior, significant low. But we're still chopping around a lot of overhead supply in this one. And we'll have to see what happens. But it's constructive as long as we're above that rising 21 EMA. And if it breaks below that on volume, I would expect this gap to fill and then just see more distribution, maybe a meeting with its 200-day or 50 SMA. So that is Meta. Moving on to NVIDIA. This has earnings coming up. Very strong advance here off lows, off this higher low. This would have been an awesome spot kicker candle through these highs, this kind of short-term pivot. But now, it's warranted a rest and it's remaining above a rising 21 EMA. We do have a gap down, but a decent close here on Friday. And I wouldn't mind seeing it kind of base below 230. The lows here is about 207. You can call that 205. And as long as it does that, it's healthy. But if we undercut the 21 EMA, close negatively, and see that 21 EMA curl down, that's when we maybe need a lot more time. And looking to the left on the chart, you can see that this spot here around 209 is a pretty significant level. It attempted to hold that as support previously, and we're just entering all this chop area where a lot of volume was met. and even the highs from this base is pretty much spot on 230. So it's kind of chopping around a pretty significant area. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with NVIDIA. Lastly, we've got Microsoft. You can see this is also pulling back, but holding above the rising 21 EMA for the time being, but it's pretty flat, and there's a pretty significant, decline, angle here for 3 straight days. You've got negative action here, gap down, close lower, gap down, decent close. Not huge volume on the decline as well, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Look for stocks that, while the indexes have been, consolidating or pulling back even, they're going really tight on declining volume. That's a sign that there's very little distribution of those names, or even during this market weakness, they're being accumulated. And once, the pressure is released off the indexes like the QQQ and SPY, once this rallies just a little bit, those will pop and present good pivot buying opportunities. So keep an eye out for that. And that's pretty much it for market ETFs as well as the mega caps. Just some consolidation going on, and it remains to be seen whether it's healthy or there's a start of more significant distribution. We just have to wait and see what happens. With that, I want to move on to kind of my larger list, go through a few names from last week. I'll be posting my weekly watch list later on this weekend. Make sure you're on the lookout for that. But this is a list of names that I was watching, as a larger set last week. So let's sort by this weekly closing range and just take a look at a few top ones and a few significant ones. INTA continues to trend really nicely. Great breakout through this tight area. You can see how tight the closes were here. So even though the range is kind of 30 to 27.5, you can see how tight it was with these closes. Here you've got an upside reversal, I believe an earnings breakout, strong action, and continued drift higher. And we're right at this significant level, so I'd expect some turbulence a little bit. I'd love for it to base, form a consolidation, pull back to the 21 EMA, and then eventually present a low risk entry point. But I love the volume coming in. You can see the average volume is increasing. It's becoming more liquid, meaning more institutions are involved and interested in this name. And now we just have to wait and see for it to present a low risk entry point. Moving on, we've got ALSN. Nice breakout here into new all-time highs. And actually not all-time highs, but 52-week highs. We're entering this chop area, so we could see some turbulence, but very strong action, great volume, and decent day on Friday when a lot of stuff pulled back pretty hard and didn't close well. So we'll have to see what happens. This HVC is a potential pivot, as well as these highs. And you can also just go down to a lower time frame, 65-minute chart. You can see how tight it is to end that day. Maybe needs a little bit more basing, pull back to the 21 EMA on this time frame, but then watch basically for a low risk entry. And this could be a pretty good mover. So that is ALSN. Let's move on to DOCN. This is still off the bottom here, potentially forming a bottoming base. Big volume coming to the name, which catches my eye. Still a lot of work to do, but if this goes quiet and tight as 200-day moving average and then pops through that level, that could be a tradable pivot. And you can see it also kind of lines up with this previous area, which was pretty significant. So we'll have to see what happens. Still a lot of work to do, but this was a really nice mover back in 2021. Great action through here. Then it broke hard on this one day on huge volume, but now is potentially forming out another potential entry. This is very early. You don't have to trade this. Most traders who are traditional canned slim buyers would wait for a rally up to this level, and then basing period, and then a clear cup and handle form. But I know there are some people watching this channel who prefer to buy a little bit more off the bottom, so there's a potential idea for them. PEGA, a really nice action gap up here. Once again, a nice kind of cup shape, shallow bottoming base here. Nice action on volume through that 200-day moving average. This is definitely well off all-time highs, so not a traditional entry as well, but nice action, and we'll have to see whether this forms out after the earnings gap. VTYX, nice action right near all-time highs, and you can see that it broke through this short-term pivot, then just went quiet and tight as the market was pulling in. I'd love to see it, maybe one more day, inside day, and then you've got basically a tradable pivot right near these highs. Just watch for a push up on volume. You can see volume is declining significantly as it's going sideways. Once again, very constructive action. And this has shown the character that can really run in just a few days, but definitely want to see a strong close. And this is a biotech, so keep that in mind. And I think the last few I want to touch on was ATKR, earnings gapper. nice breakout out of a large base, nice action, and look how quiet and tight it's going here. Declining volume, going sideways, nice upside reversal on Friday, and you can buy it on a push higher through these highs as well as this one. Those are tradable pivots. And let's see, there are a few other I want to touch on. IoT moving up the right-hand side, potential IPO in its institutional due diligence phase for anybody taking the IPO masterclass. And we'll see if it can clear this area, maybe form a handle up here and then present a nice buy point. But I like to see it becoming more liquid, a little bit, strong move here. So it might warrant a rest, but very nice action over the past few weeks. And I think I want to cover just one or two more. ALGM, nice action, a little bit wedgy here on lower volume. I wouldn't mind seeing a 21 EMA retest, another base form, but is a very strong stock and is just pushing out into all-time highs. So I can't argue with the name already into all-time highs when the market is well off of those. And lastly, I just want to touch on AI, which had this super strong move and now pulled back hard to the 21 EMA, undercut this pivot, and now is just chopping around. I'm basically watching for a base to form, or at least for it to really quiet down and get really, really tight. I love seeing a decline in volume, and this will be on my radar as long as it holds above the 21 EMA and starts to base out and consolidate. And actually, I think one more I want to touch on was XM, which is setting up nicely right at this prior pivot. A nice earnings gap on high volume, really getting quiet and tight, and nice upside reversal on Friday. And volume is really, really drying up. So if it pushes higher on volume, that will definitely be a good short-term trade opportunity. So that's pretty much a run through of a few names I'm watching. I'll post my full watch list either tomorrow or the day after. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on both the market as well as a few of these names that I mentioned. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What is one name that you're watching this weekend? And with that, thanks so much for watching. Definitely go ahead and check out DeepView using the link below. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.